Hey guys, Paul here. So today's video is an interview with a guest, MonkeyFight TCG. He's another card game Yugi tuber, One Piece tuber, and he covers a lot about card game sort of marketing and accessibility, the state of card games. You've probably seen at least one of his videos. One of his really popular ones was, why Yu-Gi-Oh has a new player problem. And if you watch this channel at all, you know that these are the sorts of topics that I love to dial into a lot, in our weekly podcast, a lot of my just sort of Paul Talks discussions and stuff like that. So I figured just bringing somebody on, he and I have talked a bunch leading up to this, and we've been trying to plan some kind of collab, and then we just eventually decided, let's just sit down and talk and sort of see where it goes, and then maybe we can think of some other videos to do from there. But it's a really interesting conversation, and I'll just preface it by saying it is a very long conversation. It's basically podcast length, so if you're into that sort of thing, this is great. Pick up a snack, set it on in the background. I think that we get into some really juicy, interesting topics and come up with some interesting solutions. But the second is, I guess, like a trigger warning for some people, because a lot of people don't love it when these conversations can be they seem maybe very negative or very critical of Yu-Gi-Oh! I know not everybody's a fan of that. So, fair warning, this video gets there. So like if you're not really into that, then maybe this is one to skip. But if you don't mind sort of delving into those waters, we do, try to look at it optimistically, what could change, what could improve. But I just thought I'd also put that out there. But anyways, without further ado, everybody, my interview with MonkeyFight TCG.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining me. I guess I could introduce you a bit, but honestly, how would you describe yourself and your content?
I am a variety card game content YouTuber. I cover I do specific deck profiles, and then I cover a lot of the marketing aspect behind card games as well. I am more new player focused for the gameplay aspects, but I do get really in depth with some specific decks.
That's actually, it's funny that you say that, because the marketing aspect is definitely, I think, what drew me most to your channel, because I love kind of the sort of the inside baseball type stuff as well. Why can't Yu-Gi-Oh get new players? That was, I think, it's your most popular video. And
yeah,
it is absolutely a banger, I would say, because I think it really nails a lot of the points that I discuss sometimes on this channel and just talk with, on my podcast and my friends in real life. I feel that the topics that we discuss are things that you and I both discuss are things that affect a lot of the average players of not just Yu-Gi-Oh, but mini card games. And I've sort of sensed and you can tell me if you feel like this is the case for you, I've sort of sensed an increased amount of awareness in card gamers, especially Yu-Gi-Oh players, in terms of like maybe not feeling like they're being catered to in a certain way, or kind of wondering like, so how are we going to get, new blood into these card games, or how are we going to retain players? Have you found that to be the case? Like, do you feel like that's something more people are talking about now, or?
100%. There's so much more competition in the market. It's like a repeat of the like pre-2008 recession era, where there's just so many card games and they offer so much. You go to One Piece, you see players come out of the regionals with like $3,000 in prizing, and you come to Yu-Gi-Oh and you get a top 8 mat. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's the whole card game market right now, I feel like, is just, whether you're playing, I think, casually or competitively, it just feels like it's tense right now. Like, Bandai's got a new game every other year. But then also, like, I mean, there's like Star Wars Unlimited, there's a League of Legends card game coming out, like there's Lorcana, all of these things where what felt like it used to be the big three, just like, okay, it's Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and then whatever random little fourth game that you desperately try to play and then ends up disappearing. It's not like that anymore. The new games are like, I feel like, I always describe them as like, they're hungry and they are willing to cater to new players and sort of do what needs to be done. So
yeah, every new card game that comes out launches with like almost a full tournament like plan for a scene just right off the back. I was looking through the League of Legends one, and they're like, yeah, here's our plan for tournaments all for the next year after release. And it, for like a card game that honestly seems to be a bit more on the cash grabby side.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I know. I was looking at that and I was like, they're just right out of the gate. It's like esportsy like feeling vibes, where it's just like, okay, you're gonna compete for money and like, be good at this game, and that's gonna matter. Would you say, just to I guess give us a launching point for conversation? We'll talk Yu-Gi-Oh because that's what the people are they're usually here for. How are you feeling if you had to give a Yu-Gi-Oh like a grade in terms of how it's doing? And you can choose to interpret that question sort of however you want to. But if you had to give like Yu-Gi-Oh a grade, right now in sort of mid 2025, how are we doing right now? And feel free to go at length and explain your answer.
Okay, I'd separate this into a few categories.
Mm-hmm.
For products, I think we're at a D. It is not the worst I think it's ever been, but it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really build decks from buying products unless you're willing to sink thousands dollars more than any other card game into products. And they're split across so many different sets.
Oh, don't I know it?
Yeah. For the interactions and gameplay, it's still an A. There's Yu-Gi-Oh offers so much you can't get from any other card game. And honestly, I love how hand traps warp the game because it's two players forcing the other to go into inboards and interactions that they're more okay with playing against. And it's really fun, especially building combos to handle that. As a deck builder, I love it.
Mm-hmm. Any other
Now,
categories where you'd like give a different grade?
yeah, the competitive scene, I think it's a C right now. The new promos they've announced are really cool, but I need to see how they're actually implemented and like distributed and stuff.
Right, yeah.
But they're I hope it keeps going.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then maybe for a last category of sorts, how's like kind of player retention or like onboarding feeling if you had to give it a grade?
Ooh. That's not good. Somewhere between a D minus and an F. It you
Yeah, go ahead.
you
Go on.
can't
I mean, go off.
you can't get people to get beyond even reading the cards, much less putting them together into actual decks.
Yeah. So I guess let's start with your first grade, which was products. You said that Yu-Gi-Oh is a D in your opinion right now. I'm inclined largely to agree. I think it's Yu-Gi-Oh from if I had to kind of in brief, I guess, talk about where like Yu-Gi-Oh products are at right now is I think that Yu-Gi-Oh products are existing in they have this product structure that Yu-Gi-Oh has pretty successfully managed to do for most of its history, which is to stay like 4 main sets a year, two reprint sets, usually one in the spring, one in the fall, and some other stuff sprinkled in. I guess like deck builder packs sort of feel like they're the newest mainstay in the lineup. Um, and I think like it's worked mostly on players just accepting it for what it is. Like if you're in the Yu-Gi-Oh ecosystem, you just know that this is how products work and you kind of deal with it. But I think that it's difficult to come into because other card games, it feels like, do a better job, I think, with like set design, not just from the obvious one is like, the mixed rarity system is something that a lot of people are pushing for a lot, myself included. But also I think just even the way that sets are sort of built out, like where you can't really like draft a Yu-Gi-Oh set typically. You oftentimes can't, build a deck out of a single set in any capacity. Even deck builder sets, which sort of feel like they're supposed to be that, aren't even they're like kind of wishy-washy in that department. But for you, go into more detail on that grade. Like what sort of is fueling that for you?
A lot of it's just how much money you have to put in to get anything playable out of it. But
Mm-hmm.
you're real right about how disparate Yu-Gi-Oh packs are to open.
Yeah.
Like Terminal Revenge, which is a pack I really like, you can't pull any complete cores from it. You open your Ritual Beast cards and there's just stuff missing that you need to play the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one problem that new players come to when they want to like pick up a game is, what set do I buy?
Yeah,
And there's no
no,
correct answer for Yu-Gi-Oh.
there's not. There's really not. It's strange to me because, you know, and I know we're probably going to get into sort of the dual ignition decks and like tactical tries here in a bit, but like I feel like with Yu-Gi-Oh, there's just actually no product I can recommend to a new person. And that's not to say that like that's not even like a mark against learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh. That is, like you said, it's just there's not a product that is giving you the things that like you would need to build a deck. Because let's say there's an easy answer you can give somebody, which is, okay, go buy like your 3 Blue Eyes structures, right?
Yeah.
And that'll get you like 90% of the way there. Get a couple other cards, you're okay. But the problem, I think, is that like not everybody wants to play Blue Eyes. A lot of people do, but not everybody does. And if you want to play any of the other hundreds of decks that exist in Yu-Gi-Oh, the products suddenly become extremely disparate. If you want, I guess for like just sort of an easy example, I was opening just sets like Alliance Insight recently, and I realized there's a couple of new archetypes. Like I guess you could build Regenesis out of that set. That's before we get into talking about rarity distributions, but you know, you could build a Regenesis deck. But with sets like Alliance Insight and Supreme Darkness, and these are like mainline sets, it's mostly support for a lot of old existing things. Fine, but what can you build out of them, like out of just the sets? That's where I feel like sometimes it gets rough. And my quick little continuation of that too would be in the things like the deck builder packs, where okay, I could open this deck builder pack of like Justice Hunters or, you know, something like that, like crossover breakers. Then like the rarity thing becomes an issue because it's like, well, can you buy like 2 boxes and pull most of the core? No, actually, you can't. Like it's, you know, the consistency card, the starter card, the extender, you know, whatever, like the starter spell, those are almost always going to be like really hard to pull. And so much so that like you can't really reliably expect to get them out of boxes and packs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like,
What we
sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So I liked what you were saying about the older support for in main sets is just very hard to pull from, or to pull or build anything out of. That's what I thought they were like trying to fix with the maze of like memories type sets,
Yeah.
where they're like older, mostly older reprints with a few new, like, I guess, nostalgia archetypes.
Right.
But they also have the exact same set formats of the deck builder packs, so no one can actually get anything out of them.
Yeah, those are brutal too with the like pull rates. My understanding is that they've recently improved this, but for the longest time, and I think you're aware of this, with the deck builder sets and the legendary duel, some of those older legendary duelist sets, they would always do the thing where one box is 3 ultras, and that was always insane to me because, you know, by MSRP, which is like what you're paying something close to that if you're buying it at your local card shop, you buy a box of like one of these maze of sets and you just get like 3 ultras, and just 3 ultras. And it's like, it's really harsh because, and like, you know, if I wanted to build the Odeon deck, you know, I got to get, you know, Man with the Mark or whatever. And it's kind of like, or Man with the Mask. And so it's just like, it gets rough.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's like, let's say you're doing it at like $80 MSP. That's more than $25 in ultra rare. You know, that's crazy.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
You're not guaranteed a collector's rare either, so you're almost certainly losing money if you're just picking 1 or 2 boxes here and there.
Absolutely. I have a friend who is like, he sells, like, he has a card shop, and he's been telling me how people just don't want to buy sealed Yu-Gi-Oh. They just don't. Like, it's you know, from the perspective of somebody running a card shop, he's just like, it's so difficult to like solve that problem as a card shop owner, because Yu-Gi-Oh players want to show up and play in tournaments and stuff, but they're buying a lot of their stuff online. That's just where they're buying their singles, and that's their right. Like, fine. I mean, that's just kind of look out for number one, right? Like, you just buy your cards in the most effective way that you can. But the real issue comes up when sets have short shelf lives and they're very top heavy, where it's like, okay, like I opened Supreme Darkness, but if I didn't pull, Molcharmy Meows or maybe a Baoaku, there was just no reason to buy this. Like, it's just pack filler. And this is another thing I suspect we'll get into, is like the middling cards in those sets, like maybe the evil hero cards that come in Supreme Darkness, aren't really super competitively viable, but because Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't really offer like other places for these cards to reliably be used, it then makes them feel like even more disappointing to pull as a result. So yeah.
Bad Yu-Gi-Oh products make like everything else worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it makes tournament prizing at a local level just
Abysmal.
miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were my local game store was like offering boxes for winning events, and players still didn't want them.
That's
It
when
was
it's bad.
so
Yeah.
bad.
I was at YCS Houston actually the last month, and I was doing public events, and like they're giving out Genesis Impact as like entry pricing, and it's like one pack of Genesis Impact for every $5 that you pay for entry, and it's like, man, I don't want. And then also, and I think Duelist, what was the one? Duelist Nexus. They're giving out Duelist Nexus like in 2025. It just like that was the pricing, and so like we already are having this issue with something like Supreme Darkness or Maze of Memories or Maze of the Master, and like that's new sets. So I mean, imagine how bad it is with like anything that's older than a year.
Yeah,
The shelf
get
life
your
is
Noble Knight
non-existent.
that's already banned.
Yeah, get like a core that's either of a deck that's like been banned, power crept, or just heavily reprinted, like to the extent that the original set just there's not really any excitement in pulling the things. So yeah, I mean, what are the improvements for products? Like, are there like what's top of mind for like making the current structure of the Yu-Gi-Oh products better, in your opinion?
You'd have to implement the OCG model entirely and lower box prices.
Yeah.
If it's too expensive to print cards, I think everyone would be okay with less commons per pack.
Mm-hmm.
If it meant saving, if it meant lowering the cost, which
what cost do you feel like would feel fair, I guess, for like boxes and or just individual packs?
the value you get from a current box would be like $40-ish, but that's not feasible. You'd have to give players more out of them, and a good box price is $60, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
Like,
I think that's a good one.
if you're offering more, you could go 80 or the $100, which is the Bandai standard. But
yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah,
I was gonna say, yeah, I think like 60 sort of feels right. Something like that, yeah. I mean, like even something that comes to mind for me too is like I sometimes get the impression that like the experience of opening a Yu-Gi-Oh box isn't as enticing as it sometimes feels for the OCG. Like they get box toppers. I was recently opening like the Duelist Duelist Advance, just like an OCG box of it, and they include like a box topper pack, which was really interesting. Like and I'm not sitting here saying like this is just a transformative inclusion that makes it all better, but like the box topper was interesting because I think, to my understanding, it actually just has it's a pool.
It's a guaranteed ultra, right?
Yeah, it's a guaranteed ultra from like a pool of cards related to the decks getting new support in that set, which I thought was pretty cool. So like for mine, I think I got like a Ether the Heavenly Monarch, and there's like others as well that are in there. And then in addition to that, you get a token. You just get a token with the box. And
yeah, it's in the box. It's really cool.
It's really cool. You just kind of like peel it out of there, and it fits in a sleeve, and it's a perfectly like fine token. And to me, like it, again, that's not the absolute deal breaker or whatever, but I do think it kind of shows a little bit more care for the experience of opening the product itself. And that's all before you get into the set distributions of OCG mainline boxes, where a lot of cards come in multiple rarities. So if you're just looking for your easy copy of this, new Dark Magician Girl support that was like an Alliance Insight, like you can get her in like a pretty easy to pull rarity or an extremely like flexy high rarity, and either way, like it's available to you. And I think that's not something that the TCG seems to be as willing to do.
It- There's also a big issue with Yu-Gi-Oh boxes compared to every other card game is there's no alternate artworks.
I know, yeah.
When you open so for One Piece, you have your base super secret and rares, but you also have alternate artworks, and then you usually have 2 to 3 different types of like higher special collector rarities on top of that. You got your SPs, you got your wanted posters, and then you got your manga rare. It's so fun to open One Piece boxes.
Yeah, I've always wondered why Yu-Gi-Oh hadn't tried to lean in a little bit more to, high rarity alt art type stuff. It just feels like it's a relatively easy inclusion, and one that I think serves collectors well, and like also kind of the blingy, show offy kind of like competitive types, because some people don't care. Like they would use a common SP Little Knight because whatever, it's functionally the same. But then there's also people who would take a lot of pride, like, and you do see who take a lot of pride in having like a QCR SP Little Knight in their extra and all that stuff. So take that a little bit of a step further and like do kind of the cool alt art that's like really hard to pull and like makes for an extreme chase, but does not detract from one's ability to get basic value from the set and just still pull like the things they need to play.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to guess from Konami, the two big arguments against it would be it simply costs more to commission, even if it's not that much. And second, it would, I guess, hurt the identity and brand of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, it's an issue with Magic right now that you have all these frames and no one can really tell what's a Magic card anymore.
Yeah.
It's the promos we got with the new, tournament borders around the Yu-Gi-Oh promo cards. Those look like they belong on Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and it's so impressive how well they've done with those.
Yeah, I think like with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's interesting because they have at least done alt arts of cards, but they just tend to do this sort of strange thing where they'll release them like 1 to 2 years later. Like I'm just thinking of like Apollosa, for instance, or IP Masquerena,
Yeah.
but like they'll do it like a year or two later, and it'll always just be in like a side set. Like they treat it like it's just a different art you can get in the set. Like it doesn't,
Yeah.
it feels unceremonious.
Yeah. And they usually make a lot of them so ridiculously hard to pull. No one can even really obtain them. Like some of the Sky Striker alt arts are ridiculous to pull.
I think that they're trying. I guess like my thing with that Sky Striker stuff, like because that was last year's Battles of Legend, right? Where they put yeah. My guess is that they were trying to do something like a One Piece style thing where it's like, okay, because I know like One Piece has things like the wanted poster arts and stuff like that. My guess is that was their attempt at trying to do something similar. Like it's like a chase rare thing for like the hyper collector. So maybe that was their objective. I don't know that it like went over very well, but
I don't know. They also do this weird thing with alt arts, like from the new recent wave, is it's like other archetypes in like generic cards, which was weird.
yeah. Oh yeah, like the Pot of Extravagance, Called by the Grave, like those.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing them in like a starter deck, that would make sense. But they're just doing
There.
them in a new rarity collection thing.
Yeah, you know what I think actually a lot of this sometimes feels like it comes down to for me
Yeah.
is a lot of these alt arts and sort of rare. They always, when the OCG does them, they feel like they're kind of intentional, and then the TCG seems like they just are kind of stuck with like trying to repurpose a lot of stuff into one pack.
Mm.
So, like this year's Maze of the Master was the light legendary duelist set, plus some TCG exclusive things, plus a one or two reprints you might want, and then random other imports. And like they just kind of like have to just cram it into a pack. And this actually leads me to a bit of a rambly, ranty thing I have about Maze of the Master, which is that I actually don't know what the identity of the set is. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It ugh.
Like,
So many Yu-Gi-Oh sets would be benefited by being mini sets like they're in the OCG. Where instead of a full price box, it was just a $30 small thing you could pick up on the side.
yeah, low commitment. I mean, because so like my thing with Maze of the Master, and it kind of bleeds into I guess the whole like casual new player like not knowing what to buy problem. So Maze of the Master has not Exodia, but Odeon, and also conveniently I guess has Kaiba's like Union ABC support cards, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a DM fan, then these are two things that would probably speak to you to some degree. It's like recognizable characters with new support for their recognizable archetype that you remember. The thing is, though, when you look at a pack of Maze of the Master on the shelf, it doesn't really convey any of that. Like, there's no picture of Kaiba, there's no picture of Odeon, and like all the monsters are just kind of in these small little tiles. And so there's just not that like it's tough to really understand, I think, for a new person what I'm supposed to be, why I would buy this set. And I think that there are fans and like even friends of mine who have long since stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh, but like would be interested in a thing like this, but it isn't made clear that that's what's in the set. Like it's just not very obvious. And I sometimes think like either doing those smaller, more concentrated sets where it's like, okay, here's exactly what you get in here and we're not going to charge you much for it. Or even, and this might be like a hot take, even just being like, okay, listen, the Odeon stuff and the Kaiba ABC stuff they're structure decks. Because on a shelf, that gets noticed. People look at structure decks and will buy them, and it's just like, okay, Kaiba's staring at you and he's got a giant ABC dragon cannon behind him. This is something it's easy. There's so much less friction because it doesn't matter if the cool anime thing got support if the person it's targeted for will never ever know that it's inside of this set called Maze of the Master.
Yeah. I mean, that's what advertising is supposed to be for with like the quick trailers they do, but no one sees those anymore. It's not the early 2000s where on TV you can just
Yeah,
play those.
I don't even freaking know where those trailers play sometimes. Like, because I don't. I mean, are they on TV? Like, are they? I don't really. I guess they're just like
YouTube.
YouTube pre rolls sometimes.
They're on YouTube usually, but I don't see them ever because I do YouTube Premium.
Yeah, I just well that and like even like if it's I don't know I think like with so I've seen like these videos of sets like Mage of the Master, but there's a certain crowd, and you and I both know this from just doing YouTube for so long. There are a lot of people where you can tell them like, okay, hey, you can buy an apple at the apple stand across the street, and there's an apple stand across the street that'll say like apple stand, buy apples here, and there will still be people who are kind of like, so where can I buy an apple? And I don't
Oh,
say that like as just to be mean, but like I there's the amount of people who the explicit internet marketing just misses them, but what doesn't miss them is when they just walk into the store and just see like Kaiba, like he's there on the box, like there he is. And so for me, like I always think that that's something that they could just lean into more because I just haven't heard anybody talk about the ABC stuff. But I think that at least someone might if it was a product that made that more clear.
yeah. It- When you said about how few, like, when you said the thing about the starter decks, it made
Mm.
me immediately think about how few starter decks Yu-Gi-Oh has in comparison to every other card game.
That's so
One
wild
Piece,
to me.
yeah.
Go
Even
ahead, yeah.
even smaller games like Star Wars Unlimited do 1 to 2 every set, and it'll be like those double ones.
Uh huh.
One Piece, it's like they're up to like at least 10 a year now. which is crazy.
And they're entry point things. Like it's just like you're just getting a
Yeah.
new entry point every 6 months or every, however often.
They started doing waves of six every 6 months to a year, which is crazy.
And they do them in pairs. Like in most of the Bondi games, like they'll do like just like
Yeah.
hey, here's the red one, here's the blue one. You and a friend can buy them.
That's another big thing about Yu-Gi-Oh. Yu-Gi-Oh has no good word of mouth, which sucks because the number one way people get into playing card games is when their friend tells them, "Hey, come play this card game. Come try this out." And every Yu-Gi-Oh player I know just badmouths Yu-Gi-Oh and complains about things.
It's
It's such a problem.
Yu-Gi-Oh's I guess the irony is not lost on me that, here we are kind of technically
Yeah.
complaining, but I will say this. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh has this strange reputation issue at card shops where, and you can tell me if you sort of noticed this. I think at almost any card shop I've been to, people want to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Like there's a sense that people want to be a Yu-Gi-Oh player, but they are like they've heard something bad about it from another person or just whatever. It's kind of its reputation precedes it type of problem. So I'll hear people be like, yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh's that game with all the hand traps, or Yu-Gi-Oh's that game with like the tier 0 decks, and like it's just, I quit when they did pendulums. But you don't actually hear that about many other card games. Like it exists in this weird space where people are kind of complaining or saying a thing that they heard that's bad, but they're saying it, which means that they do know and kind of care. And I always get this impression that given one or two changes, they would like to be a Yu-Gi-Oh player, but type of thing. Like, have you ever sensed that at all?
Yeah. And a lot of people love to give it a try, but they can't from the price. A lot of people would love to play a slower format like they used to. A lot of people would love to try Master Duel, but Master Duel is its own
Beast.
has its own unique problems.
Yeah, it is. It is. When you and with the word of mouth thing too, I think like I guess there's one last little bit on the starter deck, sort of structure deck situation, is that, and this also ties back to the pack structure thing as well. All right, the water stuff, the kind of new line of Mermail water cards.
Yeah.
They released them in Rage of the Abyss. There's like 4 or 5 new Mermail cards in that set, and then 4 or 5 new Mermail cards in Supreme Darkness. And I just don't really think that was a good call because it's weird, right? Fire King got a structure deck. These are two archetypes that were lore-wise related and historically were both released in structure decks. Like there's the Atlantean structure and the Fire King structure in like 2012 or 13 or whatever, right? And it's strange because like why not do like that One Piece Digimon type of, thing where there's just the Fire King structure, the Atlantean structure. They're both two structure decks. They're just released as a pair because without doing that, you have Fire King, which I guess is like easier to get your hands on, but with Mermails, it's back to that first problem we talked about. You can pull all the Mermail cards you want in Rage the Abyss, but you still don't actually have Atlantean Dragoons or Neptibus.
Yeah.
Like they were printed 10 gajillion years ago. And sure, you can say, well, if you wait until quarter century Stampede and like 8 months after, then they'll eventually maybe do a reprint of them. But then that's like a separate set that you have to buy and sort through. And then also after Rage of the Abyss, that's still not even technically all the new Mermail stuff because there's still more in Supreme Darkness. And at what point was it just like, would it have been simpler to just have a water structure deck that released alongside the fire structure deck? And now they're on a shelf and a new player can just not have to ask what do I need to buy to like pull all these cards. It's just like, well, you get the Mermail structure or the fire structure, or maybe I can buy the Mermail, you can buy the fire, when we can just go home and use those. And now we're like into Yu-Gi-Oh,
Yeah. But there is a secondary problem with that. And that's that most Yu-Gi-Oh decks cannot just be pick up and played on their own. They have so much learning you have to do. Even a simpler deck like Blue Eyes still has some very like optimal versus unoptimal combos.
Right.
I can't just hand the deck to a new guy, even if he's had some experience with Yu-Gi-Oh before, and expect him to pick it up.
I guess this is a good segue into that because we were sort of talking about this, I think, the other day. I was sort of talking about how, like, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, there's so many axes you can approach this from, really, in terms of, like, just what makes Yu-Gi-Oh kind of so complicated and just tough to approach. It's funny. I'll start with a hot take of mine, and you can tell me if you agree, disagree, how you feel about this. I would argue Yu-Gi-Oh's rules, like we're talking, its stated rules in the rule book, are not complicated at all. Yes, no?
I'd agree with that.
I think that I think that they're very sound. I think that they're quite intuitive. I think that things like chains make perfect sense, right? I use this, you use that. I use this in response. It resolves backwards. I think all of that makes sense. Costs, these sorts of things, sometimes people will joke and oh, it's so complicated. Chains are so hard. No, I don't think that chains are hard. I think that what is difficult about Yu-Gi-Oh, at least in the modern sense, is sequencing and game state stuff and just cards aren't clear about the implications of what they do. That's where I think that the difficulty comes in. Would you yay, nay?
Yeah, it's interesting because that's the difficult part is the implications of the cards themselves, not the cards themselves. That's in resource-driven games like Magic or One Piece. The difficulty comes from how your current turn affects turns, 3 to 4 turns down the line. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's all immediate.
Yeah, we're all in.
Yeah. Is how your card activation now is going to activate or affect your third activation.
I think something like the example I was giving was with Fiendsmith Engraver, where there's this wall that a lot of I actually have friends that I'm sort of trying to help them get into more serious Yu-Gi-Oh, we'll say, air quotes, whatever. But so Fiendsmith Engraver says you can pitch this from your hand and search Fiendsmith's track. And my friends are at the point where they understand Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring and hand traps as a general concept, right? Yu-Gi-Oh's a fast game, so you got to run hand traps because they kind of help you to engage with your opponent when they're going first and kind of fight for your turn back and whatever, how you want to call it. But they know Ash Blossom's the best hand trap, right? In a general sense, it works against everything and it stops searching. And I've told them that for the most part, if there's a card that summons something from the deck or just is a 1-for-1 search type of thing, that's usually a good Ash target because that's the most I can tell them when they're new. And so a person activates Fiendsmith Engraver, they pick it up and read it. That's, already good Yu-Gi-Oh guidelines. Make sure you read the cards. They read it, and it says search for a Fiendsmith spell and trap. And so they're oh, well, that's definitely a good effect. I should Ash that. They Ash it, but the implication was what was not there, which is to say it gets Ashed, but the opponent actually already had Fiendsmith tracked. And tracked is always what you should really be looking to use your Ash on. Because it's the hard ones per turn, it's the blah, 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 blah. We know all of this. You play Yu-Gi-Oh, this is so obvious, but it's weird because now that person almost feels like they were just punished for not knowing something that feels sort of hidden from you a little bit.
So you cut out a bit there, Paul.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Does this sound good? Yes, no? Can you hear me?
No.
Hold up. I will uncall recall. Okay, is this any better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
A little better. Okay, cool. Yeah, the example I was saying with is they activated Ash Blossom on Fiendsmith Engraver because it sounds like that's what you're supposed to do when you read the card, and then you actually end up getting punished more for doing that. And then the Engraver combo goes off, and it just feels like that sometimes feels like that's like the tough part with Yu-Gi-Oh for me at times, like with teaching people and kind of getting them to grasp it, is just that, like you said, the implications of the cards just aren't always clear.
Yeah, and everything's contextual for the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to do like a Yu-Gi-Oh fundamentals guide for new players in the same way as you would a like a One Piece or a Magic guide, and it doesn't work because the theories of how to handle situations change entirely from deck to deck.
Yeah, very largely.
Like, you can't even run every hand trap against every deck.
Yeah, and it's also there's in addition to just the contextual, matchup context thing, it's also just like it's weird because there's so much game state context too, and that alone isn't so bad. It's just that like okay, so like maybe somebody's told you, well, you shouldn't Ash Engraver, you should wait on Fiendsmith Tract, but like also, how does that change when the Fiendsmith engine wasn't even the first thing that your opponent did?
Yeah.
Like they've done other stuff. They're playing Evil Twins, Live Twin, like whatever, like, or just something, or they're playing Yubel, which has an entirely different sort of set of sequences and like ways that it works. And if you don't know it off the bat, you're not going to have any time to catch it in the game. Because unlike a game like Magic, just reading the cards won't tell you that they're about to contact fuse for Phantom of Yubel, and now your Ash is useless. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you just don't get to know that. And I guess the argument against it would be, well, you just play the game and experience it and kind of learn trial by fire. But I think with the way that Yu-Gi-Oh works, it's tough to even retain people that long.
Yeah. I mean, the point of Yu-Gi-Oh that is enjoyable is that evaluation of knowledge and the decisions you can make against an opponent. Or here's how to use my tools in a way to play around my opponent's board, knowing the fullness of what their options can do. And getting to that decision point takes so much work that new players they just can't stick around that long to get there.
Yeah, and I think that what's troubling and where it might where things might improve, or could have been easier at some point in time compared to now is like if you don't know that information, if you don't have the sort of the option trees and the decision making instilled already, the game only lasts like a turn in those cases. And so there just isn't time to piece it together. You've lost. So it's not like, oh well, okay, like we were kind of playing, the duel was back and forth, then they did a thing and I sort of missed, I didn't realize that it was going to become their in-game sort of move. That's just not really like a thing with Yu-Gi-Oh. It's kind of all in on that first turn. And yeah, so I think that seems to be in my anecdotal experience anyway, but I think I've heard it from many people now, is like that's kind of the part where it's off-putting and where I think some steps could probably be taken to like help teach.
You try to tell people Yu-Gi-Oh is skill-based and interactive, but that's only true if they're knowledgeable or skilled enough to be at that level.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh also doesn't have comeback mechanics like traditionally like other card games. It's
I would say the closest I would describe Yu-Gi-Oh as to having maybe something akin to a comeback mechanic would probably be just like some going second cards, but like even then it's not really that cut and dry. Like I'm trying to think of like a good example. I mean, I guess it's like Dark Ruler No More is kind of like an obvious, kind of easy one. It's like it's sort of meant to even things out, like after maybe your opponent's done a bunch. But even by today's standards, a lot of stuff like Dark Ruler, Nib, like even like in most top decks have kind of been designed to be able to counter a lot of that stuff. And even if it works against one deck, it just might wholly fail against another. So it's not like you can really reliably tell someone that this is the card that will bail you out.
It's highly contextual.
Yeah, it really is. And oh my god, there's another thing that you said that I thought was just really good. Like sometimes I think of what would it take is there like a way that Yu-Gi-Oh can be taught at a slow pace? Like but still teach what needs to be taught. Because I look at that two-player starter deck that Konami made at the beginning of last year or whatever, and I think it's atrocious. You know, I've not made it a secret. I just don't think that product is at all applicable to the game today. Outside of being like a weird product, like it doesn't have a mat inside of it. It's kind of strange, but like
Yeah.
just it's not really teaching much of like what Yu-Gi-Oh is today. And I sometimes wonder if like there could be like a battle pack or like something like a speed duel box, but like it's not speed duel. It's like it's showing you, okay, here are things that you can use Ash Blossom on, or things that you can use Ghost Bell on, or things that were like, you know, imperm stuff in a way that you can kind of learn or at least get more familiar with the different implications of a card like Ash resolving against something, or like, you know, is it better to maybe Ghost Ogre this monster instead of Ash it because getting it off the field matters since this deck's got access to a Link 1 that they can make. Like, it's so much, and it just doesn't feel like there's a way to get into it unless you just are already so wired in.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, outside of doing a completely different format or retro format, you'd have to find a way to rework what Yu-Gi-Oh tutorials there are in like the products. When you buy a starter deck, you get that little guy that just basically tells you what, you know, cards to buy.
Yeah.
Wrong usually. I'm just thinking about like the solutions to modern Yu-Gi-Oh are so absurd. Like, are you going to put an Excel spreadsheet in the starter decks?
Yeah, I know. And also, that's another thing, too, is I think, and this is maybe just, this might just be like a me thing, perhaps, but I think that Yu-Gi-Oh could actually afford some streamlining of the combos. It's it's a weird thing to say, but I guess like something that has I've seen be very off-putting for casual players is like the turn length. That's no secret, you know, 10-minute turns. But I think with Yu-Gi-Oh, there are a lot of decks that spin their wheels, and that's kind of I think that's off-putting in its own way. Like when I look at how the Fiendsmith engine operates, there's just a lot of kind of redundant little stuff happening that eventually, after a while, it just ends on Desiree equipped with whatever, and like it's right. And so
Yeah.
it's sort of like pitch engraver, grab track, activate track, grab, you know, fabled thing, and then like pitch fabled thing, then fabled thing summons, and then requiem, and then requiem effect, and summon the thing, and then shuffle a thing back, and then summons it back, and it's like it's and that's there's no boss monster out yet. There's not really like an interactive point like really going on. It's just sort of like we're spinning the wheels to get these combos going, and at any point in time, if your opponent happens to hand trap the wrong thing, or like you know the Ash on the engraver example, but also like if they try to just maybe imperm on the wrong whatever, it feels so hand trap insulated. And so what's happening there really is that for a new player, they are trying to watch and learn and like read the cards, but realizing these cards are all feints, right? Like they're
Yeah, that's a
almost
good way to put it.
not even supposed to really interact with many of them. And they're sort of wasting your time a little bit too. Like, because the inboard is just, it's a Desiree. Like, we get it. I almost wonder, like, can we just kind of like expedite some of that? Because, I mean, I know we can't, like, that's like how the cards are designed, but like, it's, I guess, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I think that
Yeah.
sometimes feels like it's a barrier.
I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh's all those, you know, feints and, you know, mini combo steps is what makes it skill intensive, but there is a draw to making more Yu-Gi-Oh decks invoked. And
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
you can teach anyone Invoked, which is
Yeah, like I
I'm just
think
thinking about that.
I mean I think like that's something that it's because what it really is I don't want any of the complication of Yu-Gi-Oh to go away. I just think that like we have to find some sort of a way or have some sort of a format or a product or something to guide people to where they can get to that point where they can understand every little step of the Fiendsmith thing and know like the game state, where to hand trap it, whatever is involved with that. Because I guess in the position that I'm at now, where like I'm on Master Duel every day, and like I go to locals, and I know like what this stuff is. I already have a plan in mind of like where I'm going to use my interruptions or my interaction cards and stuff, but it doesn't. But I've been playing the game for like so long, and meanwhile, sometimes I'm being told that, oh, there's going to be like a Digimon like special event at locals next week with these decks that you build all out of this one box. And that's like a real thing. Like my friends just gave me this Digimon deck the other day. It's like sitting on the desk over there. And I don't play Digimon TCG, so I don't know the terminology, but like it's the specific deck like strategy thing. And there's 3 of them. There's like a water one and maybe something like a blue one, a green one, and a red one, let's say. And they all seem to come out of like one pack. And they're going to be holding like a dedicated day where you just use those decks. And it's coming up, I think, next month. And it's like, does Yu-Gi-Oh like ever have things like that? Like I guess they sometimes try to do them with the deck builder sets, but
Yeah. Okay, so 2 things. First, would a deck design like Voiceless Voice be more akin to that simpler to understand uh, deck design, but in a modern context?
to me, I would say that's in the right direction. Yeah, like a Voiceless Voice where it's not drop dead simple, but it is quite streamlined and like gets you where you need to go without an excess of steps and complication. Yeah.
And then how do you feel about retro formats in Yu-Gi-Oh, like your Hat, Edison, and Goat?
Oh man, it's funny. I was going to ask you the same thing. I am very mixed on them because I sometimes fear. Is fear the word? We'll say fear that I like the retro formats. Like in a vacuum, great. Honestly, like I got into the game into the competitive game shortly before like Edison format happened. And I have a certain fondness for just the way the game was played, the pace, all of these things. I think my biggest gripe with like retro formats is that they're snapshots. So for me, it's like a fun side attraction. But what if I want to play my interesting new archetype like Nouvelles, right? Cool
Yeah.
chef themed archetype. It sucks and it can't compete against anything really good these days, but like I like it and I can never play it in Edison or Goat. So it's because we're just frozen in time. I don't get to use the cool new Six Samurai cards, the cool new like Nouvelle cards, or Gunkin Su ships or whatever. I'm kind of locked into playing Black Wings till the end of time or whatever. And as a tool to like learn, I think they're pretty good. I think competitively speaking, it's really been blowing up, and they test a different skill set in a good way. I just like I guess I don't think that they're like the long-term solution to like Yu-Gi-Oh's sort of sickness. They're just a thing that you can also do.
Yeah. You
What
know,
about you?
I'm an idea I'd like to see for imagine taking a retro format like Hat and using it as like a base set and then implementing like a rotation on top of that. So you could
Oh.
get new stuff in while
Mhm.
still maintaining the early era designs of Yu-Gi-Oh.
There's something. You know what? Actually, you're so right because what could be so fun that I've always felt is like, what if? I think I've read people comment this before too. Like, what if they kind of design cards almost for like hat or Edison? Like that. It sounds mixed because it's like, well, if they're designing cards specifically to be like an Edison power level, they'll still be higher than an Edison power level because they're like being custom designed for it. So it might still just feel like a little too good. Because like, why would you retroactively design like a bad card, right? Like it can only ever be like good. But still, I like the idea of that rotation where you kind of move people along at a pace.
Yeah.
Like they're starting at a point that's easier to understand and they're getting steadily like moved along. That I feel like there's something there.
That's what Duel Links did. And I'd say Duel Links overall was a success, even if it did peter out towards the end.
Yeah, no, actually, I do think Duel Links did a good job. I think that like Speed Duel was like even on track to being something like that. Like it, you know, it had its own woes, but it was like, it felt like it was like on the way there.
They needed more support not to come out around COVID.
Yeah, that did not help its case at all. I There's one other kind of major thought I think I had on the entryway thing with Yu-Gi-Oh, and that is so I'm not like the prize support thing. I guess is kind of on the more competitive end. I do want to touch on that in a bit, but I think that as far as like just getting into Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm just still almost back to your original point that you started with on this, which is what do you tell a person to buy? Like to just get in, like what do you tell them to buy or build? I still just don't think we have a clear answer. Like I don't know what I would actually say to someone in 2025 beyond just buy your Blue Eyes structures. And I guess that is the answer, but like why is that like the only answer? And you know, can there be a better answer?
And for Yu-Gi-Oh, it's just you have to tell them to buy singles.
Yeah,
and it really sucks.
And not only do you have to tell them to buy singles, but you're also in effect telling them to you're on your own with finding out what singles to buy. Like that's not so bad. Like, I mean, you know, people are capable of like a Google search, but still, I mean, it does mean that this game is not even going to hold your hand for even that long. Like, buy your singles, like figure it out yourself. And that's fine if it's like a budget deck, but like God forbid a person end up spending a lot of money on the singles that they didn't know if they did or didn't need, and you know, because that can happen. So
yeah, I mean, step one is go find a tournament deck list and net deck it. And
right.
It works, but like it takes away the process of discovering cards, you know, testing out multiple different things, and you know, falling in love with parts of the game you didn't necessarily expect to fall in love with.
Oh my god. That you just hit on something really good there. That's the fact that because I have seen a sort of a stream of some new players who kind of come into it and go like straight into competition where it's like exactly what you said. Find a deck list, you know, net deck it, order it all on TCG Player and kind of call it a day and like try to, it all comes in, you try to just learn that deck's nuances. But you're right that means you're sort of missing out on the ability to find an aspect of the game that you like on that journey there, because you're just jumping into the deep end. And maybe the deep end accepts you and maybe it doesn't, but like the fact that, you know, just an example for me personally, one of my favorite parts about of playing Yu-Gi-Oh is like kind of the card economy thing, right? You know, one card for two, and specifically like waiting to chain my cards such that like my opponent wasted a removal on it and I can chain, you know, my set MST to pop their other back row, or chain my Econ or my Book of Moon, you know, extracting more value from cards that way. And that's something that that was like a learned enjoyment of the game. It was something like I'd read about it and heard about it and stuff like that, but it's just something like I fell in love with in my general process of improving at the game over the course of years. And I think that when you're just sort of told, okay, like buy your singles, like just go copy this list, grab your Fiendsmith engine, get your impulses, buy your, your Molcharmies and just copy the list and then just learn the spreadsheet and play. Like it feels like it's less personal to each person.
Yeah. Oh, with all the legacy support, I'd almost say that the Yu-Gi-Oh discovery points are all tailored to old players.
Yeah. What do you mean? Talk about that a little more. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you open a pack or when you open a box or your case, you're gonna get all these older cards that may make you go, "Hey, I have these cards from way back when. These Six Samurai cards. I want to put them together." But a new player will have no context for why these cards are cool and exciting. Because legacy support isn't exciting on its own usually.
Right.
It's very rare when it is.
Yeah, that's true. I've actually, just a quick little hot take on legacy support. I almost don't like how they like some of the legacy support recently has been different, and that's fine. Blue Eyes has been good. It seems like the Odeon stuff's pretty good too. But like generally, I actually don't even love the way they design legacy support because they tend to just turn them into like go second pray decks. Like I guess that's channeling some of the anime, but like I was excited for like the Shining Sarcophagus stuff, and I found out it just feels like it's a little shallow and like loses to like Imperm Ash. Like I mean that's more of like a side rant, but it seems like they design a lot of them that way, and it's not very. It's a little deceptive to the buyer, I think, too, because it's like, you're sort of sold on the idea that your Yugi deck will be like it's new Yugi stuff, but it also just can't stand on its own. So
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's the way. There's an excellent video about how the OCG designs decks, and a lot of it is just to take advantage of the really overpowered generic options, like your Appaloosa or Baron.
Yeah.
And a lot of legacy support is kind of tailored around that. So few of it does, which I think the best legacy support we've had has been in Power of the Elements. Things like Rika Con, which turn the gimmick of tributing your own monsters into a form of removal.
I actually thought that was so clever. Like I'm a real sucker for when Yu-Gi-Oh decks get something that really feels like their own. Like Rika Con is a masterclass example of like they're not, telling you to just use your Rika deck and then make it into a Baron and an Appaloosa, right? Like no, it is very much a strong interactive sort of like thing for the deck that like it feels like it keeps the deck's identity but strengthens it significantly. Like when they nail those are fantastic for me.
And I'll be fair to legacy support. I don't know how you make something that isn't just generic inboard spam with Six Samurai. You're not fixing that.
Six Sams, it's almost its own little special case because like I think that they Six Sams lost in the moment that they like honestly printed stuff like Gateway. Like it was never gonna be able to be anything different, I think, at that point. And that's a bit of a shame because like the Six Samurai concept is cool, but it's just like, man, the monsters spam themselves out. And I remember I had a friend, he was playing something, he went to a regional and just like he played against like there were 2 or 3 Six Sam players who just like Trish looped him. Like that was just because that was the identity. Like that's Six Samurai in the modern day. They can't stand on their own merits. They just let's Trish loop you. Like
yeah, and you'd have to do so much to redesign the deck around something like Bushido. You'd have to redesign a deck like Six Samurai to use more of its like Bushido counter aspects or having different attributes of Six Samurai. That's really difficult to do in a modern context.
It's hard, and I know, like, at least it seems like that's one thing I will give the TCG some credit for. I guess as we maybe transition into this competitive topic too, is they quickly identified that like Appaloosa and Baron were kind of ruining a certain side of Yu-Gi-Oh, and they eventually got rid of them. That's a decision that I agree with. I know like I've heard sort of mixed things on it, but I'm a fan of decks at least having to I as much as I don't love dealing with like Fiendsmith Desiree or whatever, I'd rather deal with Fiendsmith's boss monster than another Barone and Apollosa, generally
I
speaking.
yeah, I agree. But that's a problem when the TCG wants to balance cards around the TCG context, but when cards are designed, they are never locked anymore. So everything can go into everything, and I think it is a problem for how a lot of people want to play Yu-Gi-Oh.
I don't know why they haven't addressed this. Like that just seems I don't actually just I don't know. Like I'm very curious why they haven't. I guess in their view, like it's like deck creativity. They're just like keeping the door open where you can kind of combine lots of things,
Yeah,
but we all know where that really ends up going, which is just
Master Duel format.
Master Duel format. Exactly. Just take the best sliver of every engine you can find, right?
Yeah,
Especially it starts with a non-committal special summon, pitch engraver, special unicorn, send a special Diabell star, like just even the Millennium cards, even those. Like
yeah,
just no commitment and just get the benefit of the engine and then transition to the next engine and then transition to the next engine and then turn it all into an Apollosa and then go to the next, you know what I mean? Like it's very, I guess like they're okay with that. But I have to give the TCG a lot of credit for at least knowing to get rid of those.
yeah. It's taking the starter and extender gameplay to an extreme degree, and it's fine, but I think it's more inducive to burnout.
Yes, there's the word. That was like on the tip of my tongue. I think that is the thing that can lead the game feeling like it's just moving so breakneck and burning like it just burns people out of it. Like I think it's even worse in Master Duel because it's best of one and like that's already a you know what I mean. Like it feels so like you won the coin
Yeah,
flip, you lost it, you got the hand traps, you didn't, and then like your opponent just went from engine to engine to engine to engine to make the same familiar suspects of a Barone, an Apollosa, a Desiree, and like whatever other just any generic Omni Negate esque thing that they could find.
yeah.
And it will burn. And I do think that like just encountering that over and over and over and over, like it just burns people out. Like it makes Yu-Gi-Oh seem wildly insane and also like just repetitive. Segue maybe into just the competitive aspect of it. That might be like a good like last topic, I guess, unless something else comes up. You were saying that you feel that like competitively speaking, the game's like in a pretty good spot and like gameplay wise and stuff. So what do you mean by that?
I approach card games more as a deck builder, and the way Yu-Gi-Oh decks are now, you can customize them to out so much stuff. There's so many specific interactions that if you're a good enough player, you can find and build around that. The previous use of Metaltronus as a card was amazing. I Even if it is a bit overpowered in some cases, it's so fun to build around. I
Yeah.
was able to do stuff like put it in plants to where I could Metaltronus my opponent, but they could never Metaltronus me. Rogue decks have, even if they are at a massive disadvantage, are so fun to build with right now.
I do think so. And I also think that something that Yu-Gi-Oh has done a good job of is like, and it sounds ironic to say, I think, because, we've sat here and sort of complained about, long combos and like, kind of whatever things. But I do like that with the advent of some of these cards that activate in the opponent's turn, like in archetype cards that do, like the new Vanquish Soul card, some of the new K9 cards and things like that. I do think that they are allowing players to tango fairly. Like, I remember when Tier Limits first got things like, was it Sheeran, right?
Yeah. All right. Was it
Where
have
no, yeah, Havness. Yeah, stuff like that. Where like people are like, what? Like they get to have these turn zero cards, like that's so unfair. But I think what people have actually found is that by giving more and more archetypes cards like that, you actually help to sort of balance the issue that Yu-Gi-Oh's had, which is that going first is obscenely strong.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, well, yes, my opponent is going first, but like I have things that can interact with them and get my own engine started. Like I'm not just praying I have enough hand traps to stop them. I'm actually like getting to summon something of my archetype and kind of get that engine flowing and, you know, maybe disrupt them in that way, so that like turns don't feel like it's just, okay, my opponent's playing solitaire. It's like I'm getting to play too. We're engaging here.
Yeah. The elements design wise were great. Shizu's not so much, but
100% agreed.
it is sad how hard it was to appreciate tier element format if you weren't in that competitive
Yeah,
scene.
you had to be in that because you had to be walking that razor's edge,
Yeah.
and like not enough, or not. I would say not enough. But like that's like where that divide is. You know, like it's like you are either on that razor's edge of like competition where, you know, tier element format is very fun and like interactive and skill expressive, or you're not, where it's like, what the hell has happened to this game? Like,
Yeah.
it's one or the other.
It's a surprisingly common problem with game balance. You end up with games like League of Legends, which are balanced around the competitive scene, and the average player who's just in your solo queue is never going to have a fun time. It's
Yeah,
not balanced around them.
that, you know, you're right. That is like something I felt with Yu-Gi-Oh in just the last few years. It kind of feels like Konami has forsaken even the idea of really pulling new people in. Like they're just like, listen, this is just going to be a game that is driven around the existing player. Like whale for the new set to get the new secret, like the couple of new secrets that you need, and I mean need to compete, and then everything else will just kind of be designed around that ecosystem, that set of exchanges. You know, like you buy your Fiendsmith engine, you buy your Fuwalos, you buy your Impulse, like, and you enjoy that format. Like I haven't sensed that people going to YCSs are like extremely angry at like every single thing that they play against. Like generally they seem to be enjoying like matchups and metagames. It's just that they're having a fine time, but the mid core kind of is dissipated, and the on ramps have all been blocked off, and it's just like you and your competitive friends can have a great time, and that's fine, but at locals, Yu-Gi-Oh really has some struggles, and so yeah.
To balance a game like Yu-Gi-Oh for both the competitive and casual audience, it hasn't been like a thing in format since pre like Adamanticators,
Yeah.
like toss format.
Yeah, yeah. Toss sort of feels like that last bastion of finding something close to a middle ground.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, you know, there's a reason it's become a legacy format that people talk about now, and like honestly, part of me thinks it was always bound to get this way. Like there ain't no resource system in this game. There's no rotation in this game. Like, you know, it could only ever really find its way here. Like without some guardrails, I guess you could call the ban list a guardrail, but like, come on, right? You know,
The ban list is a guardrail that depends on a ridiculous amount of skill from Konami to implement consistently.
and not
It's
even
never
just,
going to happen.
it's yeah, like 'cause the ban list, you know, it's funny when you look at some of the things that get banned, it almost feels like they're just some cards are just designed with the idea that like, yeah, we'll eventually ban this, but until then, you know, like a Rise Heart type cards, and you know, it's it sucks because I think that what I find is that like I enjoy playing Yu-Gi-Oh. It's just hard for me to tell someone else why I enjoy playing it because they just can't see it. And I know that not everything is supposed to be for everyone, absolutely. But these are people that I know have played Yu-Gi-Oh before or have expressed interest, and they are now just like, oh, fuck it, I'll just play Commander on like Friday nights, or I'm playing One Piece because like it's a more a laxer game, you know. It's like it's not asking you to kind of keep a gun to your opponent's head like every single like step of the game like Yu-Gi-Oh can sometimes be like.
Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh! It it needs just something. It needs a format, like a entirely separate format, where people who just walk into a card store could sit down and actually play it. There's nothing in the game that you could do that with right now. And
Absolutely.
if I were at Konami, I would try to design an event, a product, something to where this is a viable position to have. Because Yu-Gi-Oh's player base, while they are consistent, it's not consistently growing, and that is terrifying
It
from a
is.
business perspective.
It is. I think that I want to say that I think Konami is aware of this. I think that they know that the problem is there. I think that they are just like hard pressed. I don't know if it's like pressure from Japan or you know or just like maybe they're just like, well, listen, this is just a money maker thing. Like we're going to just it is easier to milk what we've got than try to take that risk and raise something new. I think that for me though, it's just tough because Yu-Gi-Oh like is kind of my favorite game, and so I don't want to see it just be this because it's like I've met people through Yu-Gi-Oh. I've like enjoyed so much of it myself. It's like been a good competitive outlet for me, but also just like a I just learned to appreciate things and strategy and stuff from Yu-Gi-Oh, and I hate that like it feels like it will probably only ever really be existing competitive sort of in the know players because Magic is easy to play and One Piece is easy to play and like God forbid something like Pokemon. I mean, it's kind of bland to play, but like it's easy to play. And like Yu-Gi-Oh, just like, there's just no way to like chill with a friend and like play some Yu-Gi-Oh. It's you have to lock in with it. That said, maybe a good thing to I guess round this off would be like what are like some small solutions? I know you've actually gone over a few in videos. I know I have too. Like, are there just any small steps that you think can be that either of us, I guess, think like can be taken to maybe move things in the right direction? I've noticed like the prize support stuff's been kind of well received. I know they announced like Retro Pack 2 today, and that's a thing. Um, Pulse check. How are we feeling on those?
Really good. I mean, small changes they could make. First off, don't ever short print a single card ever again.
Yes.
That immediately destroys a set in a lot of people's eyes. Second, they should have an OTS pack specifically for winners at a local event. Like we just guarantee you first place in Ultimate Rare. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Every other card game does
That's
that.
huge. Like that's actually huge. I like that idea. I never thought about that. Just straight up. Yeah.
They should permanently implement uh, retro formats in Master Duel, maybe on a rotation system where they rotate through a few ones. Add like a rank ladder for it or something. Not like a full one, but just
Yeah.
they also could 100% just convert some of the Yu-Gi-Oh sets to mini sets.
Yeah.
That one's
I'm
bigger, but
well no. I mean, hey, I'm open to everything. I was gonna say a couple of mine were I have noticed other games doing this, so I think that Yu-Gi-Oh could maybe try it, and I don't think it should be as much effort as it some people might believe is a league system at locals. Like I've seen Lorcana's been doing this. There's one other game I forget. I think Digimon was trying to do it for a bit, like where basically you kind of are rewarded for showing up at locals, entering tournaments. You obviously have to like play in more than one round or something to get credit, and maybe other little achievements, little mini things, bring a friend day type of stuff. Like if you bring a friend, then you get a Lost Art promo. I don't know, like just something kind of. It's simple, and there's like a basic verification. You can't just bring your same friend every single week, and they have to like enter the tournament and play a round or something, right? But you know, things to get people back in shops and maybe get them a little bit excited about that. My second thing for me was probably like, since I know we're not going to just magically get like the mixed rarity system that everybody wants, I think that they should actually probably just focus on like either pushing down the rarities of intended meta staples, like your Gordian Slicer, right? It's like it's a secret. It's not like expensive right now, but I could just see a world where it ends up being like one of the expensive spells you have to run to compete. Maybe moving some of those down to like ultra rares and supers and when possible, just to make it where like the process of just getting cards to play is cheaper, or maybe even just reducing the window of time between reprints. Like I just think that we shouldn't have had, like, it's great that we just got a Fuwalos reprint and that's cool, but like keep that trend, like trim that time between like the card being $100 and the card finally getting a reprint. Like let's trim that down. I don't see a reason for it, because those are just because people just want to play the damn game. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't think that people are trying to show off their triple Fuwalos. I think they just want to play Fuwalos. Like
The problem, the reprint time is so long that reprints never matter because they just print new expensive cards you have to have.
exactly, yeah, it's exactly that, and it's like I think like just trim that down. Like I guess in their view it would maybe devalue sets, but I think that my long-standing belief is like Yu-Gi-Oh players want to play Yu-Gi-Oh. It is nobody is collecting SP Little Knight when it was $100. You're not getting it to collect. You're not getting, Triple Tactics Thrust, like Pot of Prosperity when that was expensive. I guess currently that might be like a Dominus card or whatever. No one's collecting them because the art is cool or because of not with those cards. That's not the objective. They're there to play. Like you want to play Dominus Impulse because it's a cool, strong new card that adds a layer of interaction to the way the current game is played and the way that cards are designed and decks are built. But like, if people can't get the damn thing, it just does no good to me. Like that stuff needs to get into people's hands so that they can at least enjoy the process of playing. So yeah, like I think that's like my really big one, and I think my last one. And I don't know where Konami dropped off the bus with this, because like 2023, I feel like they were killing it. Is structure decks, like what's happening to the
Yeah.
structure deck thing? Like why 2023 I think had like 4. Like it was like
Mm.
Trap Tricks, Dark World, Crystal Beast, right?
And they're all pretty good starter decks.
Yeah, like I feel like they were dropping like 3 or 4 a year for a little while, at least 3 a year for a bit. And then like Fire King happened at the end of 2023, and then we got nothing in 2024, and
Well,
then finally Blue Eyes at the beginning of this year, and it's just like I don't know what that's about, but that needs just change that. Like
I think they intended to swap them with the tactical tri decks, but for whatever reason, we never got them
we
in the
never
TCG.
talked about the tactical Tridex. Oh my god. Okay, we have to address this real quick.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What like what are we doing? Like why are the tactical Tridex not here? I'm sorry, like there's just I can you is there any reason you can think of why they're not doing this? Like
Okay, from a cynical marketing perspective, we can't reprint cards that cheaply because we can't sell future sets to competitive players.
guess so, yeah.
It, reprint equity is stupid, though. It destroys a long term. it destroys player trust, and
Yes.
it destroys new players, which are where you really make your money long term.
It is so strange to me that this kind of gets back to that whole like the OCG just treats the players better. Like it just feels like it takes care of them more. This is like a prime example, like just tactical tries. Like, because even from that cynical marketing perspective, that should still apply to like Konami in Japan. Like, they should still be like, okay, how can we make the most money? Because it's not like they just want to make less money in Japan, right? Like it's so strange to me because those are like the not like the absolute 100% perfect product, but they are just
They're pretty
light
close.
years above what we've got. Like, I mean, it's actually insane. You know, when you consider how much like already the yen to dollar conversion, a tactical tri deck is like $7, and you know you're getting your full decks like engine, multiples of cards, Veilers, droplets, Dark Ruler, No Mores, you know, imperms, I guess Maxi as it's relevant in the OCG, but like that could be a droll or something here. Like, you know, just in one box. You know, this wild. Like, and then Asian English is they have like the dual ignition decks and stuff. And it's like kind of largely the same concept.
Yeah.
What is going on? Like,
It in Japan at least they have to do products like that because the competition is so much more insane in the Japanese market.
true, true.
It's also there's not a culture of there's no scalping culture in Japan like there is in America. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Americans have so much spending money. It it destroys any resale market.
It is a little insane that we haven't fully felt the card game pressure like Japan has, because you're so right about that. Like, I've been to Japan only once, but you know, when I was in Akiba, there were just so many card shops, like entire buildings where every floor of this like 9-story building is a card. It's like a floor with like 3 to 4 card shops and figure shops and like stuff. Like it's so much more entrenched in their culture, like just of being kind of their pop culture, and it's competitive as hell. I mean, just like there's so many cards, so many games, like releasing so many products and like advertising them strongly and like just putting them in your face. And it's very like, I can see where Yu-Gi-Oh would feel the heat. Like, we gotta treat our players right because they're not guaranteed.
I think
Sorry,
it's the
go
only reason Yu-Gi-Oh's been making changes at all recently. I don't think we would have gotten the new promos for tournament play if One Piece wasn't so massive.
I bet you're right. Actually, that because One Piece is killing it. One Piece is the one game over here where I'm just like, I think it is legitimately encroaching on like big three territory. In some regions, it already is.
Yeah. And when Yu-Gi-Oh's having an off month, which is more months than not right now,
Yeah.
One Piece takes it out.
Yeah, in terms of sales, it's usually like right up there. And at locals, at least in my experience, I mean, they're neck and neck with like interest in terms of how many people want to play. Sometimes One Piece just beats it outright. And I think there's just more excitement around promos. That's okay. That's a small little thing I noticed too. Have you noticed Yu-Gi-Oh's just kind of gotten rid of promos entirely?
Yeah. I mean, they're now cycling Lost Art promos,
Yeah, it's
which
like,
is
what is any hunches as to what's going on with that? Like, it's not the end of the world, I guess, but like, what do you think?
well, they're not censoring as many cards anymore. That's a thing. Uh, they're also not selling as much product, and Lost Arts are only going to help so much with that.
Well, I was also just thinking too, like, they've taken the promos out of the tins. They've gotten rid of special editions, which used to have like promos in them as well. So it kind of just feels like there's just not actually anything that has a promo in it anymore. Like,
Given
it's
how
just
boxes,
lost art.
yeah, given how boxes are right now, would people still buy special editions?
I guess that's true. I just think like, at least with special editions, There are some faults with the way that products are designed, such that I think special editions might still just collect dust on shelves because, like, literally, like you said, the product design fundamentally like isn't like, would you buy a Supreme Darkness special edition? Probably not. But I think like at least with those special editions back when it was like $10 for 3 packs. I know with inflation today that might be like 12 or something, but still, it was a small markdown of like value, and then also like they made for kind of good tournament entry prizes. Sometimes like I would go to locals that would do that. Like with an older special edition, they would just do them as tournament entry. It was cool because they did that whole thing where like they used to import cards in special editions, like V jumps and stuff. I know that was like many years ago, but even just in like 2020, right before they got rid of them, they were doing the thing where it was like you'd get a foil version of a card that was releasing in the next set, plus like some reprint of just a generally desired card. And I thought that that like was a nice touch. Like it just didn't, you know, it's nothing amazing, but it's like when Called by the Grave was about to come out in I don't remember the name of the set, but like it just, you could get it in the special edition of the set prior and in super rare.
Yeah.
And it just kind of felt a little like fun or something. Like, I feel like there's just so many of the products now are so functional product. They're just like no box topper, no promo, like nothing. Like, I mean, it just, you know, buy your box and shut up. Like that's like what I feel for even the tins. It's like, you know, there's no promos in these tins. Like, why are you even giving us the tin? At least they realize that, because this year now that you don't even have to buy the tin, you just get your 3 packs, I guess.
Yeah. They need to, it doesn't have to be monetary, but boxes should give you something that makes the experience worth it.
It's like, yeah, it's like a sign of goodwill. Like it just, you know, they care. Like, you know, you're having a little fun opening your Yu-Gi-Oh packs, because like it's the same thing with like, okay, you're opening a box and like if your 2 secrets aren't good, your experience is ruined. Simple.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, you got the $3 secrets. Sucks to suck. Like, I don't know. I think that like all this talk of like, you know, like box toppers and stuff, it's not gonna like save Yu-Gi-Oh, but I think it can help to soften the blow, and that shouldn't be understated, at least.
People open boxes and they get nothing. They do have to get something. In a game like One Piece, you have the you have leaders, and if you get an alt art leader, even if it's a bad one, it incentivizes the player to maybe let's try to build around it. You know.
Yes.
And that's something you don't have.
Yu-Gi-Oh, it's harsh. It's bad, but yeah, you know. Anyway, I guess I was trying to think if there's anything else that you feel like maybe we haven't covered here, or maybe we could just explore it, I guess, in a future video or something.
No, I think we've just about covered most everything.
Yeah. Well, okay, cool. This was awesome. Seriously,
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming on kind of short notice, but hopefully people listening enjoyed the video. I think that, you know, I have to apologize. I know like sometimes it can come across as like we're just, you know, just ranting and like we hate Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever. It's not like that. I mean, clearly, I think for the both of us, we want these things to change and improve. Like, you know, we're identifying issues in the hopes that like, hey, if this was better or different, then like things could grow and whatever. So I look forward to hearing people's comments and thoughts on it. Of course, make sure you check out MonkeyFight. All of the important links will be in the description. And yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just moving the conversation along to solutions. It's the best thing to do.
And then Konami will hire both of us and the world will be saved. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, cool. Give it a thumbs up, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.